Hello everyone, and harasimin ke'erene, chesed lechem v'shalom, grace to you and peace. In this video we're going to take a look at a very interesting verse of scripture, Zechariah 12:10, and answer the question, who is the pierced one? Zechariah 12:10 reads in the Hebrew, ושפכתי על בית דויד ועל יושב ירושלם אורחכם ותחנונים, והביטו עלי את אשר דקרו, וספדו עליו, כמספד על היחיד, והמר עליו, כהמר על הבכור. I will pour out on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, and they will look on me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son, and they will weep bitterly over him like the bitter weeping over a firstborn. Now the key verse in this, or key phrase in this verse is the third one. So let's zero in on that phrase first, and they will look on me whom they have pierced. And let's exegete from the Hebrew. First we have והביטו, which consists of the vav consecutive and the third person plural hifil perfect of the verb nabat, meaning to look, behold, gaze, regard, thus they shall look. Then we have alive, which is the preposition el with a first person singular suffix. El generally has the connotation of motion to or toward a person or place, thus unto, to, toward, upon, me. Then we have et asher, which consists of the direct object marker et and the relative pronoun asher. The direct object marker is not translated, so this would mean that which when it refers to a thing, or whom when it refers to a person. This is true in every instance that et asher is used, and you can see Judges 14:6, Numbers 22:6, 2 Samuel 21:11, and Joshua 9:24 to verify this. Thus here in Zechariah 12:10 we translate whom as it refers to a person. Finally we have Daqru, which is the Cal perfect third person plural of Daqar, meaning to pierce or to run through, thus they pierced. And finally, thus in Zechariah 12:10 we have they shall look upon me whom they pierced. At this point we need to address a poor translation that is out there. For example, the JPS or Jewish Publication Society Tanakh of 1917 translates, and they shall look unto me because they have thrust him through. The problem with this translation is that there is no him, there's no because, and they have left out the relative pronoun asher or whom. The reason people who want to force this incorrect translation give is that the remainder of the verse, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son, and they will weep bitterly over him like the bitter weeping over a firstborn, references him. And therefore they are reading the him back into the phrase. However, to do this, they must make an implicit assumption that the me in the first phrase, they will look on me whom they have pierced, must be a different person than the him in the rest of the verse. However, this is very poor translation philosophy, as one of the major tenets of translation philosophy is that a translation should contain the same level of ambiguity as the original. Thus, the ambiguity of speaking of me and speaking of him as if they were the same person must be a part of any good translation, because that is what the original Hebrew says. We are not to be trying to translate away the rough parts of any passage that exist in the source language. We are not to do our translation from the source language to the target language and then translate those difficulties away. We're to leave those difficulties, we're to leave those ambiguities in the target text as they're found in the source text. That is good translation philosophy. Thus, they shall look upon me whom they pierced is the proper legitimate translation. That is faithful to the original Hebrew. Now, the word for pierced, dakar, normally means to literally pierce through the body with a sword or a spear, as in Numbers 25:8. So let's read Numbers 25:1-8 to see this usage in context. When Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab, for they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods. And the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel joined themselves to Baal of Peor, and the Lord was angry against Israel. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel." So Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Each of you slay his men who have joined themselves to Baal of Peor." Then, behold, one of the sons of Israel came and brought to his relatives a Midianite woman, in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the sons of Israel, while they were weeping at the doorway of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he arose from the midst of the congregation and took a spear in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent and pierced dakar, both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through the body. And so the plague on the sons of Israel was checked. So we can see here that Phinehas pierced dakar, the man of Israel, and the woman through the body with a spear. That is the normal usage of dakar. Now, of the 11 usages in the Bible, we find that 10 of them have this normal usage to be pierced through the body with a sword or a spear. However, dakar can also be used in a figurative sense, and we see this in Lamentations 4:9. Better are those slain with the sword than those slain with hunger, for they pine away, pierced, dakar, by lack of the fruits of the field. However, even in this figurative usage, you can see that the referent is to the normal usage of dakar, to be slain with a sword. Thus, to die of hunger is figuratively to have the body pierced through with the sword of hunger. The Septuagint takes this figurative sense of Zechariah 12:10 even further, which is characteristic of the Septuagint translators, who often translate in a way that avoids anthropomorphisms. And anthropomorphism is ascribing human characteristics to God. The Septuagint translators did not like when human characteristics were ascribed to God, because in the case of dakar, for God to be literally pierced through the body with a sword or spear would mean that he would have to have a body. And thus the Septuagint translates this phrase as "Epiblepsonte pros me ant on katorchesanto." They will look toward me because they mocked me. The word for mocked here, which is being used to translate the Hebrew dakar, is katorcheome, which means to dance in triumphant mockery, to dance with contemptuous or disreputable abandon, to treat despitefully. So thus, mocked is a good one-word translation, a dancing that is a mocking of someone, a despiteful treating of someone. So mocked is a good one-word translation. Now, however, in the New Testament, Zechariah 12:10 is quoted as follows in John 19:37. "Kepalen etaragrafe lehi, opsonte is on exekentesan." And again, another scripture says, "They shall look on whom they pierced." The word for pierced here is ekenteo, meaning to pierce through or to kill. Here the piercing is literal, as can be seen from the context of verses 31 through 37. So let's read the context. "Then the Jews, because it was the day of preparation, so that the bodies would not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high day, asked Pilate that their legs might be broken, and that they might be taken away. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first man, and of the other who was crucified with him. But coming to Jesus, when they saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with the spear, and immediately blood and water came out. And he who has seen has testified, and his testimony is true. And he knows that he is telling the truth, so that you may also believe. For these things came to pass to fulfill the scripture. Not a bone of him shall be broken. And again another scripture says, they shall look on him whom they pierced. So you can see this is the literal piercing, in that one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear. So the literal fulfillment of the piercing in Zechariah 12:10, they shall look upon me whom they pierced, occurred at the cross, when Jesus was literally pierced through his body with a spear. However, the Septuagint translation, they will look toward me because they mocked me, also took place at the cross. Luke 22:63. Now the men who were holding Jesus in custody were mocking him and beating him. Matthew 27:41. In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him. Luke 23:11. And Herod with his soldiers, after treating him with contempt and mocking him, dressed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him back to Pilate. Therefore, Zechariah 12:10, they shall look upon me whom they pierced. The pierced one is clearly Jesus Christ. This is made even more clear as the pierced one is also called Hayachid, the only begotten, a title of Jesus Christ, as in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And the fact that the pierced one is Jesus Christ is further reinforced by calling him Habechor, the firstborn, another title of Jesus Christ, as in Colossians 1:15. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. However, the me in Zechariah 12:10 refers back to Yahweh, the Lord, who starts speaking in verse 1, the burden of the word of the Lord, Yahweh, concerning Israel. Thus declares the Lord, Yahweh, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundations of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I, Yahweh, am going to make Jerusalem a cup that causes reeling to all the peoples. So you can see that the me in Zechariah 12:10, they shall look upon me whom they pierced, is just a continuation of the I, Yahweh the Lord, speaking in verses 1 through 2. This continues all the way to verse 10, and then they shall look upon me whom they pierced. The me is Yahweh. Therefore, as me, the pierced one of Zechariah 12:10 is Yahweh the Lord. As him, the pierced one of Zechariah 12:10 is Jesus, and therefore Jesus is Yahweh. Thank you. Evcharisto. Toda rabah.